Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. It is National Creative Beginnings Month, the month of May, and it is the very first Sunday in May. And May the 4th be with you. We have Johnny Schaefer here. You know, he co-hosts Big Blend Radio every fourth Sunday with us. Every first Sunday. I've got the fourth stuck on my brain. He is here every first Sunday co-hosting the show. He's an award-winning singer-songwriter. I encourage you to go check out his website, hearjohnny.com. Not only check out his website, but listen to his music. So welcome back, Johnny. How are you?
I'm great, Lisa. So nice to be with you again, and may the 4th be with you. And a shout out to all my legion of friends who are really into Star Wars. And it'll be fun to talk about creativity today.
Well, I love it because you and all of our guests work in the world of creativity. And I don't think anything in life, there's nature inspires us a lot, but creativity is everything, whether it's business, whether it's your taxes, whether even having to be creative on how you get from A to B, and kind of break that routine at times. And I know that's the one thing I think Nancy's always taught me. And Nancy was supposed to be on the show today, but dogs want to hang out with her more, apparently. So she couldn't let go of the dogs today. But Nancy, raised me in a world of creativity and looking at nature. And Nancy, for those who don't know, not only has been in the world of writing and publishing magazines and newsletters, but has started off as a wildlife artist. And so her creative beginnings really began as a child. And it was, sketching her pets that got her started in that. And it led to her traveling all over Africa, taking me as a child with her. And our life started from that. So I just want to give my mom a shout out because I know she was going to talk about that today. So, but let's get our guests on the show. We've got some amazing guests. We've got Matt Cost. Matt is a prolific author, and I mean that. Prolific. He has got, I can't count how many books. He writes history and he writes mystery, and his latest novel is out. It's the beginning of a whole new series. The latest one is called The Not So Merry Adventures of Max Creed. It's a great Robin Hood style read. And as I talked to him about it on his last interview, he's really good about characters and getting you sucked into his books. And then next thing you know, they're done and you're like, wah, wah. So everyone go to mattcost.net. Welcome back, Matt. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, Lisa. It's good to chat with you and chat with everybody on this May the 4th be with us. I think that the Force from Star Wars is probably the ultimate of creativity.
I agree. It is. It is really true. I agree. I want to bring our next guest on is Barbara Redding. She is based out in Austin, Texas. She's an award-winning travel writer and photographer, and also, had a career in journalism, working in newspapers, magazines, which she still does. But she's written everything from crime to cruising. So you can go to barbararedding.com. So welcome back, Barbara. How are you?
Thank you, Lisa. I am great. I love this topic, and in addition to being a writer, I also decided to take up watercolor painting during COVID. I have a neighbor who is quite an accomplished painter, and she offered to give some of us lessons, which we started via COVID online, using Zoom as our means of communication. So it's something I continue to do today. I can't say that I'm great at it, but it's just another creative outlet, and I think it's just fun to find new ways to express yourself, and painting is one for me.
Does it change how you look at your taking photographs as you travel? Does it change your photography?
It definitely does, and it has really enhanced my interest in museums. I mean, I always went to art museums anyway, but I think having done some painting myself, looking at paintings in museums around the world it's really enhanced, I think, what I see, how I see it, and, just the better understanding of the thought process that goes into actually creating masterpieces.
Awesome. I love that. We've also got Jeffrey Spear joining us. He is a food and travel writer. He's an author. We met him on our show with the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association, how we met Barbara, and also Joe Clark coming on in a couple seconds here. He came on with his book, My Life in Gluttony. It's a fantastic read. It's got delicious recipes, so there's creativity in that. But aside of being an author and a writer, he's also a branding expert. So you can go to his website, spearwrites.contentlead.com. I'm going to send you there. He's got some others, but if you want to read his writing, that's a site to go. It pulls up all his articles. So Jeff, welcome back. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Lisa. I'm glad to be here.
So is that the best website to send out to everyone?
Yeah, if people want to read my writing, they can go to the Contently site. If they want to know about my branding site, that's studiospear.com.
Excellent. So is doing the branding side, that's creativity. Did you start off in that before the writing, or the chicken, the egg, or the chicklet? I shouldn't say that.
When I was 6 years old, I came home from elementary school. The band leader had come around with a list of instruments that we could play. And I said, "Ma, Dad, I want to play the drums." And my mom said, "Oh no, we're not having that noise in this house." And a few weeks prior, I had told her I had wanted to learn how to draw. And she said, "We'll send you to art school, but no drums." So I'm trained as a fine artist. That evolved into graphic design, which evolved into marketing, which evolved into writing.
Wow. There you go. So there's some creative work for you. Our next guest, Joe Clark. She is a food, wine, and travel writer. She has a podcast with us called Joe Goes Everywhere, which she does. You can go to her website, haveglasswilltravel.com, because she does travel that way, whether it's a wine glass, a lot of times, or her camera. And you can also go to recipiestravelculture.com, and that's where a lot of her articles are, and recipes and pairings. She likes to do pairings. So she gets creative with pairings and tastings and recipes, but also through her writing and photography. So welcome back, Joe. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day here at the beach, and I hope it is gorgeous where you and Nancy are.
It is. It's nice and warm. Today we are in Gulfport, Florida, and as this airs, we'll be back in Asheville, North Carolina. So kind of traveling the southeast right now. And everyone, Jeff is not too far from us. He's in Jacksonville, which we waved to him at some weird hour as we were driving through. And we would have been at a decent time, but we found a swamp. And so,
there went that idea.
Yeah, swamps, and Nancy and I kind of have, a thing going on. And as I said, Barbara is out in Austin. Matt is based out, is it Brunswick, Maine that you're in? Brunswick?
Yep.
All right. So nice weather now this time of year, right? Or no?
It's rainy today, but tomorrow we have the perfect weather, sunny and 70.
It's still too cold. Cold.
We've talked about that. We don't want it any warmer than that.
Is that because you're a writer and you need to hole up in a room and stay warm and cozy that way? Or do you
No, it's
you
anything.
Keep your house at 70?
Oh, 66.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. No.
I don't have that much thermal underwear.
No. I've got thermal whatever, but not that. It's not happening. Everyone, Johnny is in Pasadena, California, was born and raised in the Porterville area in Central California, which we found out that we have a lot of common ground on, right, Johnny?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, I know that, you've talked a lot about the national parks in the area, and I grew up being able to just drive up to the mountains, and you get a lot of space to let your mind wander into different creative landscapes when you get to see beautiful things like, the views from the mountains and the trees and the rivers and lakes. And so it was a great place to grow up.
Yeah, up in the Sierra area. So somebody let the dogs out. But anyway, that's it. Nature is really beautiful. I was going to go, Joe, being where you are on the Grand Strand in South Carolina, does nature inspire you with writing and photography and all that you do?
It does. Like you, I love going to the swamp, and right now the birds are nesting and chicks are hatching. So it's fun to go to the swamp and see the ibis and the herons and the egrets and all their babies. And it's so historic being on the East Coast where everything in America started. I was in a church this morning that it's older than our country, 257 years old. The parish is older than that, but this brick church is actually 257 years old this year. So that's inspiring in itself when you're sitting in a building like that.
I agree. I agree. History does give you some creative vibes there. Johnny, I want to get into everyone's beginnings of what you do today. And how that kind of started for you. But Johnny, before we were started recording, you were sending around some great quotes. You want to share one of the quotes that you had? And I know that Jeff's got some to back us up on that too.
Yeah, I was thinking about creative impulse, and when I went to Amsterdam a few years ago, I went to the Van Gogh Museum, and I love how Barbara talked about how meaningful it is for her to go to museums, and it really had an impact on me because it gave me context for Van Gogh's paintings. Not only to stand really close to one of his paintings and to see the intensity of all those brush strokes and the layers of paint, it really drove into me how much went into those paintings. And then to hear the stories of his life, he had originally wanted to be a clergyman, and then really wasn't thinking of being an artist at all. And he used to write a lot of cards and letters to people. And he'd look out his window and see things. For example, he was writing to his brother, and he looked out the window and saw a lamppost and a star and said, "It is so beautiful, I must show you how it looks." And so he sketched it. And a lot of those sketches became some of his most famous paintings. And it was this creative impulse, and it grew out of this need to express his feelings about the world around him. And my mom said that she used to sing to me when I was a baby, and the first thing she ever heard me do was sing back. And so music's always been a huge part of my life. I remember when I was 4 years old, I used to tell people that I was going to be a singer-songwriter. And so the cover of my first album, Acoustic Remedy, is me in the backyard, a picture my grandma took of me holding a guitar. And it's just, I always wanted to do it because I loved music so much, and I found in it a way to express the things inside of me. Mm-hmm. And so I got a degree in music, and I sang in choirs, and I played in the band, and I did everything I could to immerse myself in music, and it gave me this means of expressing the things inside me, and it's become really important to me as I go through life. As I'm feeling things, it helps me process, and it helps me feel more understood, and hopefully, do for other people what the musicians I love do for me.
Mm. Agreed. When you said you went, starts off when you went to the museum, the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, I just interviewed an amazing author, Joan Fernandez. She came on with her novel. It's called Saving Vincent, a novel of Joe Van Gogh. Wow. I really urge people to read this. It's not a biography because there is one written about Joe Van Gogh just recently by the museum. She went to the museum, and this actually sparked her novel. And she's a writer anyway, but then this became like her first novel. And she went on a girlfriend's trip to Amsterdam, and they went through the whole museum together and everything. At the very end, a friend pointed out, "Oh, here's a small picture." And since then, they've changed this small picture of Joe Van Gogh, which was Theo Van Gogh's, Vincent Van Gogh's brother, his wife. Mm-hmm. And they said, "Oh, yes, she's the one who's responsible for making Vincent van Gogh famous." And that was it. That's all they had. And she's like, well, what the heck is this? Y'all. She doesn't say y'all. I did. And next thing you know, she went on this big, thing. Her husband got all the letters between Joe and her husband Theo, and between Vincent and Theo and her, and gave it to her as a Christmas present. And so she was reading all the letters. She did all this extensive history, got into history like you wouldn't believe, got into writing women's history, and led groups and all kinds of stuff on this. And then the museum goes out and puts out a book, and there went that idea. But she turned it into a novel. And so here, what happened was Jo Van Gogh was the wife of Theo. Vincent dies, Theo dies. And so she was able to read through their letters to find out what Jo was like. And Jo had a baby, and you've got to think about those times. A woman getting into any kind of business dealing, that was kind of unheard of. And Vincent van Gogh, when he died, no one knew him. And so she decided, I'm taking over his work. And Theo was an art dealer. And so she started selling his work, but it took her years and years because she wouldn't drop the price. And she believed that much in Vincent's work and who he was. I think she learned so much from her husband, and she was living in a boarding house with her little child. And she did this. And that is how Vincent got famous, from this woman. So that museum, once again, sparked someone else's career. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing what places can do.
Yeah. And, they provide context. And one thing I appreciate when I go to a concert and a singer that I love talks about the story behind a song, it enriches my experience of the song. And that's why I love interviews, and why I love, reading, autobiographies, or even watching a biopic. Sometimes you get more insight and more context that makes the art more powerful. And museums really do that too, especially when they include, information on what went into creating the art and to the artist's life, because all of that, everything in our lives contributes to our art. And so, yeah, I think that it's a beautiful thing to have museums, and I hope people go to them.
I agree. I want to ask Matt, because he's written a lot on history, and then of course his mysteries also, bring up some history as well, and all kinds of stuff, like everything. Really, there's nothing that doesn't get touched in his novels somewhere. Matt, do places like that inspire you in creativity, like museums and things like that?
Not necessarily a museum, but without a doubt, when I'm writing about a place, it certainly helps to go to that place and be inspired by it. Whether it's the battlefields of the Civil War for my Joshua Chamberlain book, or down to New Orleans for my post-Civil War historical Love in a Time of Hate, where the fight for social equality is going on, or over to the island nation of Cuba to explore that. Visiting these places really gives you a sense of what is going on and the sincerity of it all. So I think the places definitely inspire me, if not necessarily a museum, or not as of yet. Maybe we'll have a museum, mystery.
Now there are some interesting museums like that. And I think you're on the show with 3 travel writers, and I'll put myself as the 4th there for sure. And I know sense of place is everything, right? And especially if you're writing, you've got to put yourself there to give people that texture of you being there, right? As a writer. Even if it's a restaurant, which Jeff does really well, or it could be a food truck or a street stand, who knows? He's eating mouse, just kidding. But there is something about that in place. That's how I ended up doing really good in history, and was going on the road with Nancy in South Africa and going where actual battles were. It meant so much more than a few lines in a textbook. And you're a high school teacher, Matt. Where field trips a big thing to get the kids interested in their subject, because I think we need to change textbooks to be more like, I don't know, maybe they have. I haven't been in school for like 30 something years. But I
Um,
think going out has to help.
no, it absolutely would. I mean, unfortunately, the budget doesn't usually allow for a whole lot of that. I was a junior high or middle school teacher, and I didn't get up to the high school level. So they do some field trips, but certainly not enough. But the textbooks are long outdated, and I know that some teachers still use them, and I wish that they didn't. I think that's one of the bad experiences of my life is thinking that history was just a few concrete dates and events from the past that get transcribed into this huge tome of a book and doesn't really bring to life and flesh out the people and events of history, which is really the greatest story ever told.
It's the true gossip, everyone. Well, but this is the thing. So the limitations create creativity, right? So Jeff, when you're cooking, right, and trying recipes, if you don't have exactly what you need, doesn't compromise or being creative with what you have on hand help create a dish. So sometimes not having the right stuff, so I'm thinking, Matt, not with books, not maybe giving the right information and making it exciting for kids or adults to read history. Writing a novel or writing what you do has got to have some inspiration there going, hey, it's not being done. I'm going to do it. So sometimes limitations, but I really think we need to fix what's going on for our youth, period. Like you're saying, Matt, but sometimes not having everything helps creativity. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, it varies. If if I know what I'm going to make in advance and I want to make it well, I always have all of the ingredients on hand. But if I'm looking to innovate and modify and create something that is indisputably my own, then it's like, all right, well, let's have a play. Let's see what happens with this. Let's see what happens with that. And, there are different ingredients that I encounter. Probably one of the ones most recently in Chinese food, there's this stuff called fish floss. And I had never encountered fish floss. And there's also pork floss. And it's this fluffy, crumbly sprinkle, if you will. And I brought it home and I'm playing with it, and it's really tasty. And so now I'm toying with the idea of, oh, what can I make with this? And then there's another Asian ingredient. It's a spice blend mix sprinkle, if you will, called furikake. It's Japanese, and I'm playing with that too because it's sesame and seaweed and salt and spice, and so it's just sort of like, well, let's have a play and see what happens.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, get in there and just try something new and check it out. So, Barbara, you were talking about, going around and you've been to a lot of museums as well, but also getting these watercolors out. What led you to writing as a creative? What was your creative beginning for that as a journalist, and then going into, hey, I'm doing travel writing?
Began in high school. I started working for my high school newspaper, became the editor of that. Always liked to write, and I think that's how I did start at the high school paper, was starting to write, and then got involved in, being a boss at that age, and then majored in journalism, continued my writing career, and then my first job out of college was at a daily newspaper.
Wow.
And I had always loved to travel too, although growing up in the Midwest, it was car trips to Michigan and Canada. But had always was interested in travel and did some on my own. And then when I was in Austin, Texas, when I moved here, I hooked up with a company that was doing travel writing. I had two young kids and I didn't want a full-time job, so I went to work for them part-time. And, just really enjoyed writing about destinations, particularly after I got to visit them. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. I found it hard when I had to make a living to do it to make a living. But as a retiree now, it's just a wonderful way to get to travel and to be able to write about it. So I think travel and writing are just kind of a wonderful combination.
Yeah. And like we were saying about putting people, I was going to say put them in your place. No, that sounds terrible. But when I always like to tell people how to be in their place. But getting them to feel where you were, like having some texture to writing, because travel writing has changed night and day from what it was when it first started. Before you had to do, like, you couldn't write in person whatsoever. But now, the audience actually wants that. They want to hear that you've been there and not just recreating a Wikipedia page,
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think it's most of the best travel writing these days is first person. And for some people that's easier than others. I mean, there's kind of a line. I find, because sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to know your life story. I want to know what you're seeing and how you're viewing it and why I should want to go there. So some people go too far in this, I think, but it's like anything else. It's kind of finding, your voice and finding, I think, a way to tell a story about a destination.
Well, it goes all back to limits, right? Of not overdoing it. As a journalist, you knew, like, you had so many words and only so much column space, actually. When I go back to how the magazine started in South Africa, it was like cut and paste, and it wasn't necessarily always by word number, which we have now. But yeah, it's so changed, and that makes you have to get better and say something stronger, right? To get your word across, your point across as a writer. So it's interesting how the world keeps changing. Even now, I know, Joe, don't worry. We're going to do like more than 1,000-word limit. It's coming, Joe. It's coming. I know Joe hates our 1,000-word limit, but, and it's changing. So that's good. It's changing. So don't worry. It's all good in the hood. But Joe, for you getting started in writing, because you've also been a teacher and you were in the world of computers, like, oh my, I think that no wonder you drink wine. I know computers make me drink wine every day.
They'll do it to you.
Yeah. What was your start in writing as a writer?
Well, I liked writing assignments in grade school and high school and college. I always enjoyed those when they were creative. I didn't want to write a book report. I wanted to tell a story. And when I was teaching at a business college, I had a World War II writer call and ask for a typist who could edit as they typed his book on the ship he was on during World War II. And none of my students were really qualified for that. So I took the job and did it in the afternoons. And kind of like your story, Lisa, about Jo Van Gogh, it was like one line about her and that was it. So you wanted to know more. That happened to me with the books. And when I went to Bull Island, south of Myrtle Beach, again, I said, I want to know more about this island and this house that's here. It's an intriguing, large house. And I figured it had to be some kind of a hunting preserve or something for the rich Yankees back in the day. And nobody knew. They said, well, I don't know. And so I called a local magazine, and said, I want to know more about Bull Island. And they said, well, we've never done a story on that. You want to do one? And, naive me said, well, okay. So I ended up writing my first travel article about Bull Island, and I provided the pictures, and they said, well, we'll send a professional photographer to take pictures, but we'll take yours, so that he can get an idea of what's there. So I sent them my pictures, film pictures back then, and they used every one of them. They did not send a photographer. They called me back and said, never mind, we're using yours. So that was really my start.
See, the creative beginnings are sometimes in unexpected places. And sometimes there's avenues where we go, oh no, that's not what I do. When I was back in my music days, I ended up singing things that I think, I talked about this with someone, that I ended up I actually auditioned to be in a madrigal group, or is it madrigal, however you pronounce it in this country. I had no business doing, I had no business doing that. I was a blues and rock singer. That's not who I am. But I thought, let me go audition and see what happens. And then they made me read music on site. Johnny, I know you know how to do that, right? Where you have to read the notes and sing them. Hell no. That's not happening with me. Like, I was always like, I play by ear mostly and no chords or whatever. That's why my guitar playing sucks. But I really pushed myself to do it, and they accepted me, and I was like, no, thank you. No way. That was too hard. I was sweating bullets, man. They were like playing auto harps and had to sing harmonies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But I learned so much from that session that I probably should have stuck with it just to learn some more. But I wanted to ask each of you, Johnny, with that, have you ever gone into doing some kind of music that you never thought would be what you would want to do, and then changed your mind, or anything in creativity in life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Jeff, when you were talking about cooking, you mentioned playfulness, and that's really, you said you play with the ingredients, and I always try to approach things with playfulness. And one thing I learned a long time ago is that if I don't like music, a certain kind of music, it's very likely that I don't understand it. And so I try to listen to it more and talk to people who like it and ask them what it is they like about it. And many times I'll grow to like, or at least appreciate the music for what it is, and again, in its context. And so, yeah, I've been approached a few times by people who do music very different from mine, and for some reason they liked what I was doing and said, hey, do you want to collaborate? And at first I thought, well, that's kind of weird. But then once we got together, what came out was really cool. And I love juxtaposing different styles. I do that a lot in my music, and I actually now love to work with people who are different from me. Just the other day I listened to Paul Simon's Graceland album, and just the way that he went to Africa and immersed himself in, worked with the musicians there, and it still undeniably has his stamp on it, but it's just blended in with all this amazing music and these wonderful musicians. And so it became something bigger than just his own personal viewpoint. And so collaboration does that. And so I'm not afraid of, styles that are different from me. I think I was approached one time by someone who's in hip hop, and I was worried about sounding, being too white and just not getting it and sounding really awkward. And so, but what we did was just, I contributed, a melody and sang in it, and then they put other things into the track that, that I didn't have to worry about. So it was just putting myself into it and not trying to effectuate other things that they brought that to the table. And so I was able to, and it did loosen me up a little bit, and I still need, I always feel like I can loosen up more, and that's where that playfulness comes in. So I really don't get too afraid of things that I don't know too well anymore. But I just always feel like, well, okay, how can I do this? And so then it's a lot of times it's a matter of talking to the person about what they do a lot and listening to it enough to where I begin to understand where they're coming from. And a lot of it's affected, I think it's affected, what I do with my music going forward.
I think it's also, it's great to jump into something that you don't normally do, because it stretches our wings. Even if it doesn't work, you've stretched your wings, and you're going to learn, you may use it 10 years from now, and have an understanding with it. It's like Barbara taking watercolor classes, during COVID is a perfect example of it. And it will affect other things, but, and I think these opportunities happen in life where sometimes we just brush it off. Oh no, I'm sticking in my genre. In the world of marketing now, everything's
Yeah.
like, you must be in this box. You pigeonhole, pigeonhole,
Mm-hmm.
pigeonhole for the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Screw the
Yeah.
algorithms. I understand we need to do them, but
Mm-hmm.
they suck because it just wants you to be. That's why we're the blend. You're allowed to have more interest in life, and the more you learn about in other things. I mean, Matt, you're a great example with that with your books. You cover so much in your books that people wouldn't even. I mean, how many things of what has happened in the world have you covered from the great past to the present? It's pretty amazing when you think about it. So it doesn't seem like you kind of limit yourself, because we can limit ourselves a lot, and it's very easy to stop ourselves from learning something new. So are you inspired by the daily news and happenings of the past, to keep you very fresh of what's happening now and the past, like, you know what I mean? Because the past was fresh at one point too, just depends on the graveyard. I'm sorry, that sounds terrible.
Even within a genre, there is so much room for exploration. So, I do
Mm-hmm.
write my historical fiction, and lately I've been writing more in the mystery genre. But there's so much room for exploration just within that genre. And so different niches is lately I've been writing a humorous PI mystery. And the one that came out this month is a thriller, mystery crime novel. And others are small town, Maine mystery crime. So there's so much room within that. And then you take a topic and you run off with it, and you might go down the rabbit hole of exploring genome editing or cults or, nuclear power or, any one of numerous things that, gives you so much area of expansion just within a genre, much less getting into a lot of different genres. So I haven't ventured out of the writing too much for the arts. I don't have any real artistic talent in painting or drawing or playing music, but so far I've been doing okay staying in the writing field.
Lisa?
You do have music in your books. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This is Jeff. I wanted to add, one of the elements that seriously impacts on the creative process is whether you're doing it to make a living or whether you're doing it for yourself just to be expressive. And, if you're, when I was doing fine art, when I was doing drawings, and I was trained that, you draw and you should accurately represent what's in front of you. And at the same time, I'm seeing people like Picasso and Lichtenstein and all these people that are doing their own interpretation of reality. And I said, wait a minute, I can't make things look photographic. I'm not good at that, but I have my own style. And so when I was drawing, I let it go that way. And I don't apologize for the fact that I'm drawing a hand with three fingers or a face without eyes, or, I don't have to sell it. If it turns out that someone likes it and they want to buy it, great. And the same thing goes with, some of the writing let me back up. With some of the recipes I produce, is that I'm just doing it for me. I mean, there are things that I make for myself at home that I seriously doubt if they'd have any commercial viability whatsoever, but I like them. And I thought about, I wonder if I were to open a restaurant and serve this stuff, if it would be successful. And so there's this, who are you being creative for, and what do you expect in response? And that's a big limiting factor in what is truly creative versus what's responding to a brief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I look at, Nancy, she did her art, and then there was commissions. Commissions put food on the table, and then her art ended up in collectors. You know what I mean? But, you have to.
I think though, getting back to
long time to get collectors.
Van Gogh only sold one painting during his life, and if it was mentioned that Joe hadn't really pushed it, people might not have discovered it, but the authenticity, came through, and I think if you totally pour yourself into something and it moves you, it's going to move somebody else. And I always feel like there are 300 million people in America, for example, and more than that. And if just one out of every 300 plus people liked my music, that would be a million people. And I believe that my music would connect with one out of 300 people at least. So it's a matter of reaching those people. And so I think you do it, and then to whatever extent you can be successful with marketing or communicating it somehow. And that's where I really appreciate, you and Nancy, Lisa, that you give all of us an opportunity to share our work and to get the message out there about what we do.
Well, we love it because you guys make our lives happy. You do. So thank you for that. But we really, if you live on mainstream, that's all you're getting. And that becomes kind of boring after a while. Then you're boxed in. So there's a lifestyle of creativity by opening up to not being boxed in, right? I was thinking about this. A friend passed away really recently, and he traveled the world everywhere. He's been on many shows over the years and wrote a book, and we helped him rewrite it and edit it with a dear friend of ours, Steve Schneikert. And he went everywhere. I mean, I think he's been to every country, including North Korea. And we did a video with him on that and all kinds of things. And his whole thing was about living outside your comfort zone. And it's really true. So creativity, I used to teach music, and I remember so many people saying, "Oh, I can't carry a tune in a bucket." I'm like, "Well, you're not supposed to." It would drive me nuts. But the reality is, it's like, "Oh, I can't draw a straight line." Who wants to? Who wants to draw a perfect circle? You don't have to.
Yeah, we have rulers for that.
Yeah, and who wants a ruler anyway? The last time I saw a ruler, it hurt, but you know what I mean? And the compass needle thing, it hurts, but it's about being outside your comfort zone. So I think as human beings, creativity is about going beyond the mainstream and getting Jeff's book, because you're going to learn recipes and places and understand cultures around the world and their foods, that you don't know. I mean, I can't pronounce anything that Jeff just said about those seasonings. There's no way. And if I tried, I'd probably have to go beep, beep on the air. So that's not happening. But those are the things, there's something about us human beings that if you don't have, if you're quilting, that is an incredible art form. If you're painting, if you're decorating your house or your kitchen and you like it and your realtor doesn't, who cares unless you're selling, that year. You know what I mean? It's like I have a friend who never buys houses and she lives in apartments. As soon as she gets into an apartment, and she likes to move around in them, and she travels like we do, she'd get into her apartment. The first thing she'd done in the first week is she paints a wall. And I remember saying, I'm like, "That's a really dark wall. Aren't you worried?" She goes, "They can't stop me from painting it, and I just paint over it." And I'm like, "But what if?" She goes, if I have to pay a fine, I'm going to pay a fine. I want to live with this color. And that's that, period. And I was like, you know what? That's really cool. So there's so many ways. Gardening is creative, how you design your landscape according to what your plants need and what plants you can put in there. Please do native plants for butterflies and birds and bees. But all of that is creative stuff that makes you happy. And I like what you're saying, Johnny, about doing what fulfills you. But there is the bread and butter on the other side. Like I said, Nancy took commissions. She's painted every dog breed known to man, so it's like, but like the collector's side is a collector's side where she paints exactly what she wants. And eventually that buyer will come through, and that's how it worked. And it's just the way she had to do it. Right. And she wanted to still be in her art because she was like, I'm still working on my art when I'm doing a commission. Others go, I would never do a commission, but she did because she was still in like, I'm working in my art. I'm doing what I want, not 100%, but that way. So everyone's a little bit different of how they do things. Joe, going to you, and when you look at different doors opening, that certainly happened for you. But writing, do you write just to write? Do you enjoy the actual craft of it, not just the travel part, the actual crafting of it? Like, do you get a buzz from it? I know I do from all creative endeavors, but that I do. And some of them I go, that sucked. I won't do it again. But do you get that little buzz from like maybe getting the right words just the way you wanted them?
Yeah, it puts a smile on my face, and when somebody reads it and says they really liked something, it just makes you smile. It,
Mm.
I think back to I think when I developed my love of history, I was in the community college, but I don't know, 28 or something. I was an adult and going back to school. And the professor, Whitey Pitts, brought history to life. The stories he told, the way he told things, there was no way you would forget what that person did in history. And his stories were just so realistic. I always accused him of, he was so old, he was there. And that's why he knew all these stories. And I took every history class he taught. And I enjoy that, the crafting of a story that makes people go, oh, I didn't know that. And I love it when I write about a place, a town that I visited and talk about things, and the DMO, the people who brought me to that town, read it and say, I didn't know that. Where is that? It's in their town and they don't know about it. So I love it when that happens.
Agree. Now, what about you, Barbara? What is the creative yippee for you when you're writing?
Well, I think it's the constant learning, and I think and the opportunity to meet new people. One of the things that when we were talking about the creative process too, it's you do something different and it introduces you to a whole new group of people, like the artists that I've gotten to know as just doing my painting. I also joined a local choir in my neighborhood, whom people who like to sing. You were talking about can't. It's kind of our joke. It's, can we really sing? But who cares? We are singing and we're enjoying it, and I think that's the whole point. So I would say continuous learning, and the opportunity to meet new people. Those are things that I gain from my writing as well as from my painting, and really just any creative process that I decide to undertake. There are times though when I wish there were more hours in the day. There are more things I'd like to do, but we can't do everything.
Well, the other thing too, because we're all in the creative arts and we all like to travel, and I know we all like food and wine and all that good stuff, right? So let's look at invention, right? I know, Matt, you cover a lot of, these are new things happening in the world, creating a cult. You have to have a game plan for that, right? That's creative. Sorry, but it's true. There's a whole episode on that, that we've done.
Let's just be clear that we're talking about my writing and not that I'm really creating a cult.
No, he does not. He does not. No. It's a happy hour cult though. We'll all hang out with him for happy hour. That's for sure. But yeah, look at these, creativity, and then really going for it, going back to Jeff on this. And Jeff, I'm going to start with you on this, because in your work in branding and marketing and writing and development, you've met so many people that had a brilliant idea and created something, and all over the world, like Georgia, not in this country, Georgia, all over. You've seen people go, I have this, and needing to get it out, but you have to be creative and, to the point with it. And marketing is always to the point, right? And tell a story. So some examples from each of you of what, you've seen of some business person, whether it's a restaurant, be creative with a restaurant, to a hotel, be creative. That is something that is super cool. So do you want to share a story from your travels that you've experienced somebody with a cool business that's creative?
Sure. I told the story about the tub and cut apples, so I won't repeat that one. But I was working in Serbia, and I don't remember the brand name because it's been a while. But there was this cheese producer, and he came into the office. And one of the things that I always do with any company that I work with for the first time, I say, bring in samples of your work. I need to taste it to see where it fits in the world. Who might the competitive landscape be? What are the business challenges that you're going to face? And this guy came in with some cheeses, and we opened them up, and oh my God, the office reeked of this really nasty, nasty cheese smell. And people in the office came down. First, they closed the door to the conference room, and they said, "Open up the windows." And we're still sitting in there. And I wasn't even sure that I could taste these things because the odor was so horrific. But I have to do my job and I take a bite, and this stuff is some of the best damn cheese I've ever had.
Wow.
The only premise is if you're going to buy it, open up your windows and don't invite, anybody that's got a sensitive nose. And then I was working as marketing director / creative director, not designer, but I had a designer that I was working with, and he produced some beautiful packaging, just stunning packaging. And so all of a sudden, here was this cheese that if you just had it wrapped in paper and opened it up and got that aroma, you'd never buy it. But once you describe it the right way and you put it in the right packaging and you give it the right price point, then all of a sudden it becomes really appealing. And that cheese doesn't, obviously it's not being exported, but I really miss that stuff. It was so good.
So it's about crafting the story around it and letting it be the stinky. If it's a stinky, then you have to run with it, right? Like you have to run with.
Yeah, you can't hide the reality, but there's always a way. This was not the only stinky cheese in the world. There are lots of them. And it's just a matter of, creating the right.
Embracing it.
Embrace the stink.
Embracing it.
Yeah.
You should have sold it with clothespins.
Yeah, really. But
yes, we know it stinks. Wear a clothespin and eat it anyway.
But the taste doesn't stink. Yeah, well, people eat lutefisk.
There are lots of companies that they take the negative, as the expression goes, if you're given a lemon, make lemonade. And so you have these negative attributes and you find a way to turn them around and make them positives.
I like that. I want some cheese. I love cheese. I don't care. It's all good. All of it. Stinky, not stinky. Just bring it, it's all good for you. It's really important in life to have cheese. Barbara, for you, have you seen any companies that, in your travels that you thought, were really creative with what they were doing?
Oh, a lot. I think that different types of even like museums. We were talking about the Van Gogh Museum a little bit earlier, and it's a place that I've been to, and it's just a beautiful setting, and how they document and tell the story of Van Gogh and his work. And then also I was impressed, although I didn't spend much money in the book, not the bookstore, but the gift shop. I mean, the gift shops in these top-notch museums are just the most amazing places, as far as, somewhat suspect, but commercializing everything related to the paintings and the painters' lives and all of that. So I think that there is a lot more creativity that goes into attractions that you go to visit, sometimes over the top, but other times that just tells such a fuller story of the artist as well as what happened in that particular destination.
Yeah. What about you, Joe? In your travels, you meet everyone.
I do. The first thing I thought of when you started laying this question in front of us, I immediately thought, okay, the most creative thing recently is a motorcycle loving chef. Living in San Francisco, which is 45 minutes from Sonoma wine country. So you got San Francisco and Sonoma. So Jerome added goggles, plaid blankets, a filled picnic basket, and a sidecar. And you have his company, Rides by Me. And I rode by him all through the Sonoma wine country. And it was a blast. And you can't beat it. And so he's doing what he loves. I mean, every picture I have of Jerome, he's got this big silly grin on his face because he's out here riding a motorcycle all day long and getting paid to do it. And then he spreads out his blanket and feeds you lunch, including chef-made macarons. And I was happy. What a creative thought process to do tours by sidecar.
Yeah, and economical, right? It's really
Yeah.
smart. You don't have to get a whole car, and it's good on gas, especially in California. But then you're going to all these wineries, and you got to do your wine and macaron pairing again. It's a
I
thing
did.
that's a thing for, and pairing wine
There I
and,
am. My
beer,
pairings,
wine, whatever.
I love them.
Pairings are another creative thing. That's what I'm saying. Creativity is for everybody.
Yep.
And anything that we do in our life, creativity is key to your next, so many people are changing jobs, or, that's happening. All
Right.
kinds of things are changing. And so it's
But you
time
got to
to
have
just
fun.
have fun. You still, because we're here once,
Yep.
and sometimes you need that little nudge out, that comfort zone thing, we were talking about. So yeah, no, I love this. So Matt, what about you? You've got the mafia in some of your books. I think they got creative. What's a creative business for you that you've stumbled on as you write?
Different things of different writing, but I guess I have a series coming out and set in 1950s Raleigh, North Carolina, where my son lives. And there's a place down there that we have gone to that is an outdoor music venue. And the outdoors is in the center of it. And then they have like these carrier pods all around it that have food venues in it. So you can go to, your choice of 10 or 11 different food venues, and then you carry it into the central outdoor seating and listen to music and eat and drink and have a good time outdoors. So I thought that was a pretty novel idea, and it's a very casual and low-key sort of thing, but it was a lot of fun.
You talking about Red Hat?
No, Red Hat's right downtown Raleigh. This is sort of out between Raleigh and Chapel Hill. But Red Hat is fun as well. I have been to Red Hat, so that's neat.
Well, see, this is a creativity too. Like if you look at food halls, how people see, I love food halls because it's just so micro businesses all under one roof, right?
Right.
And, it's not huge overhead for the restaurateur. And people get their selection. It's like everyone argues about what they're going to go eat together as a group, right? It's like, I want Chinese. I want this. I want that. And it's like, well, just go to the food hall and get what you want and sit down together.
Right.
And
That's right.
it creates a conversation.
Perfect.
And you're going to try something new probably because maybe your friend has these appetizers and it's like, I've never had this. Well, try it. So again, creativity. So I love that concept, Matt. And they do that a lot in Asheville at the breweries.
Right. A lot of different places have food trucks come in, I know, but this is sort of a built-in thing where there are established restaurants in these pods that are basically food trucks that don't move.
Yeah, that's cool. Costa Mesa, California has 2 anti-mall malls. So one is called The Lab, and the other one, it escapes me. It's across the street. So people have just these really different kinds of businesses. They're just not malls. And the Lab, there's a Patagonia store, and across from it is another store, but it's in an RV, and they're selling cactus. It's not an RV, it's an Airstream. So that kind of thing. And then there's a brewery, and then it's like this it's outdoors. It's not a strip mall. It's just completely different, especially when you think about Orange County. Sorry, Johnny. Just saying, but I don't know if you've been there, but it's super cool. And there's murals all over that city. And so Costa Mesa, at the same time, you've got like the South Coast Plaza, which is, very high end, very la-di-da.
Yeah.
But then it's got the complete opposite. And these people are like, no, I'm going to go and open my business in an Airstream. I think that's cool.
Lisa, what you're describing is from a commercial retail food service perspective is you're talking about someone that had a very creative idea that can be termed a disruptive idea. Because we hear about disruptors all the time. And it's what are these ideas that no one thought about and that someone actually found a way to bring it to market and it clicked with enough people? It's like, what it was, Johnny, you're talking about your music and there's an audience out there. Say, well, who has these ideas, and realizes, I'm not sure where the audience is, but I'm sure it's there. And then they find out the audience is bigger than they ever thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not limiting yourself. In other words, not just because so many people only do things because other people are doing it.
Yeah.
And well, it's not unlike the farmers markets, like they're becoming more and more popular still. I see more and more of them all the time. And in Mexico, the mercados where, people come together and you see all different kinds of just people pick a specialty and they offer that up, and they have creative ways of offering it. And you walk through this market and there are all kinds of different creative displays, and I think it's a similar idea, but not specifically like what you're talking about in Costa Mesa, but a similar idea, I think. Swap meets.
There are three concepts that I believe drive this creativity. One of them is inspiration or innovation, because innovation has to be inspired by something. But it's where did the inspiration come from to do whatever you do? And then that becomes something new and exciting and different. There are other people that they're all I words. So there's the inspiration part, but then there are other people that they imitate, and maybe they move the needle. They move the needle a little bit. Maybe they're just seen as derivative, but there are lots of imitators out there. And then there are those that are infringers, meaning that they actually take what somebody else did and they call it their own. And that was one of the things with sampling when that first came out, is people thought that was infringement. But how does the idea come about? And I still remember I went to a lecture once, and the guy was showing, he's an illustrator, and he was showing some great masters' works. And he goes, you see this tree in the corner? And then he went back and he had found an old painting in a museum. And he goes, see the tree in this painting by this famous artist? Now look at the tree in the painting by this contemporary guy. It's the same tree.
Yep. Nancy calls it the wave, because you can go into, any coastal home just about, and people have like a painting, ocean paintings, and the wave. And it was in some art book, and everybody used the wave. And the wave is still out there in like a just grand majority. Like it's the wave. And there's bunches of waves, but there is the wave. And Nancy does this. She'll walk over. She goes, look, there's the wave. Just like the tree. It's the tree. It's the wave. It's interesting too, because there's lipstick on a pig, right? Too, where you're also trying to fix something and you have to be creative about it. And maybe you can't slaughter the pig, and we don't want to slaughter the pig.
Bacon.
Well, okay. Sorry. Yes. Bacon. I hear Nancy in the background. I want bacon. We just don't want to hear about what happens to the pig, but there's that too. Like sometimes you need to play dress up, There's a makeup for things like that too. So creativity creativity solves problems, and I love it when you don't limit yourself, but then you also in life have to edit. So that was a thing I wanted to ask each of you. I remember a video, a gentleman came on about a book about presentations and video that you think you've done everything and it's so killer. But then, you have to, what he said, cut the babies. And I once used that term on a death doula show, and I had to redo the show because I was told you don't say kill the babies on those shows. But you do have to, at times, what you think is the most brilliant part, take it out. And as most creative people do, you sometimes get really pissed and then you kill it, or hopefully you save that nugget for something else down the road where it may belong in a better way, or you edited it out because someone told you to, and then you're really mad. I did that with a song. Nancy kept telling me, don't do it. Don't, you're destroying the song. And I did. I destroyed it and listened to others that I shouldn't have. Joey Stuckey is going to record it for me, so it's going to be fine. It's going to be taken care of and put back in its glory. But that's the thing. Those decisions. So, Johnny, in music, do you have to sometimes kill the baby? I really shouldn't use that term, but I'm going to ask.
I know what you're talking about, and there have been things that I had some songs that were too long, and I felt like I had to cut something, and I actually did end up what I took out, I ended up making into another song. So I think that kind of, is probably what you're talking about. And it was just a really long song, and it had different components. So the only way I could cut it to where it was a manageable length was to cut out one whole component, and then that component became a completely different song. And it worked fine, but sometimes I still like to go back and look at it the way I had it the first time. I mean, it's funny. I was watching the outtakes of the movie Love Actually, and the director was talking about how his original version was over 3 hours long, and a lot of the outtakes, you can see what was in that 3 hours, and he said, I miss it, and I keep wishing I could watch that 3 hour version because I loved all of the outtakes that he took out. They were all fantastic, and I'd be totally fine with a 3 hour. Because that's one of my favorite movies, to see that. But yeah, I think a lot of times, the limits that are placed on music, where right now they're telling us it should be no more than 4 minutes if you want to get airplay.
Oh, you got double from back in the day of the 2 minutes.
Yeah, it did get down to 2 minutes for a while, or 2 or 3, and they've expanded it, but they're still saying not more than 4, but then. Like Taylor Swift had a 6-minute song, I think, recently. And, so it's, you have to make all those decisions. And there's the radio edit where you shorten it. So you do a version that's shorter to get on the radio. Yeah. I have one producer that always loves to do long introductions. And it just, a lot of reasons they don't want to do that on radio, so I just have to convince him we have to do a radio edit that doesn't have the intro, and he always mumbles and doesn't like it.
Well, Stairway to Heaven. Oh, even though that was there's thievery in that, but then look at American Pie, one of the longest songs ever.
Yeah. Freebird.
Freebird. Yeah, I mean, just keeps going on and on, but that was a build-up. Freebird has a true build-up. Man, and everybody wants it. And you play in a bar or anything, it's like Freebird. I'm like, no, damn it, but anyway, it's like enough, but then when you listen to it, I'm like, it really is good. That was a good guitar solo, no matter what. And the guitar solo needed the intro. It needs all that stuff. This is interesting. Joe, have you killed any babies?
Oh,
terrible.
Oh, all because of you.
Oh.
You know how word count kills me, because I try to be concise and tight in my writing. But then if you're that way, the only place left to cut when it's too long is an entire story that you have woven in there. So I have a whole Word document, a whole file called Cuts to Use Next Time.
That's a good one.
If I cut them, I paste them into that document because I know I'll use it someday.
Yeah. Well, that's the truth, because, there's so much because there's also creative where you can repurpose things, right? And because things change in every creative industry, it changes all the time, so that's good to have a file. What about you, Matt? Any baby killings in your books?
Absolutely. Literally and figuratively, no.
Oh my gosh, and this is a Sunday. May the 4th be with you and your babies. I'm sorry.
No, it's, And my editor gets back to me with developmental or global edits on my writing. And generally speaking, it's to add and fill things out. But on occasion, there is things that he suggests need to be cut out and don't belong. And I go through the 3-step process. You know, the first is the anger that you spoke of, where you just curse him out and call him every bad name imaginable. And then you sort of move to denial, where you're like, okay, he's not such and such, but he's wrong and I'm right. And then eventually you get to that third stage of acceptance and you cut it out.
Because you want to be paid.
Is bourbon involved in this at all? Just like, I think, yeah, the bottle may have to come out at some point. Who knows? But it's to make things better. Do you save any of the cuts for something down the road?
No, generally not. Maybe in the back of my head it comes back around, but it's usually more pertinent things to that particular story. So,
yeah. Or do you put it in the next book for that editor just to go, I'm trying it again to see if you catch it. Do you like it this time?
Just to see if he says, wow, this is really great. I love this.
No, just mess with them. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that. Barbara, I mean, cutting babies as a journalist, right? And newspapers, you had to cut a lot, right?
Yeah.
Or did you just get used to it? You know?
Well, you get used to it because you have to, but yeah, there's usually a limitation. And, it sometimes you can argue and cajole and find extra space, but sometimes you can't. And then it just kind of comes down to, what do you do? How do you live with it? I think online there, you tend to get more words than you would get in print, which is, kind of maybe a positive change. But I also, there's the concern that these days people's attention spans are shorter. And so, there's constant, I've got editors who want everything in bullets and, give it to them quick and move on. And other editors who like a good narrative. So, different publications are different. And I think managing expectations is just kind of part of the job.
And it's now also because of what's happening with SEO and AI and
exactly, yeah.
But AI doesn't exist in searches and things like that, and ChatGPT and all that stuff doesn't exist without the content being there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it still is being utilized. It's using, that's a whole other podcast. We do our quarterly AI shows. That's a whole other one. We should do one just on the arts. But anyway, right, Johnny? I know that it's a whole other thing, but, it is changing and it's hard. You have to find where your integrity lies of who you are and you know what I mean? To balance all of that. But Jeff, have you killed any babies in your writing or your design work? Or did you put them in the pot?
I actually want to tell a slightly different story because you triggered it talking about babies. And one of the things that I do when I work with my clients, a lot of my work is packaging, and they come to me with their package and they're so proud of it. And it's so wrong in so many ways. And I came to realize that my career had become one of telling new clients that their babies were ugly.
That can't be easy.
And that's an editing process. No, we got to redo it this way, got to redo it that way. And probably having to go through those 3 steps of, denial and anger and whatever and concession. But, for copy fitting, the cute, clever stuff many times has to give way to the more factual stuff. It depends on the story. Sometimes the fun, whimsical, colorful stuff is more important than the facts. Other times the facts have to prevail.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, thank you all for joining us on Creative Beginnings. Everyone, you can find the links in the episode notes for each of our guests. MattCost.net, author Matt Cost, you can find him there. For Joe Clark, go to haveglasswilltravel.com or go to recipiestravelculture.com. For Jeff, go to spearwrites.contently.com or go to studiosphere.com. And then for Barbara, go to barbararedding.com, and Johnny, go to hearjohnny.com. Not here's Johnny. No. Anyway, I know. Thank you all so much for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Johnny is with us every first Sunday, so keep up with us there at bigblendradio.com. Thank you all, and happy creative times, and
Thanks,
take care of those babies. Don't just
May
kill
the
them.
fourth be with you.
May the fourth be with everyone.
Bye-bye.
Go create something.
Everyone.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.